All right, today we're going to tackle one of the most important parts of English grammar, the present simple tense. And our goal here is to make it so simple, so intuitive, that you'll be using it perfectly without even having to think about it. You know, if you've ever felt that English grammar rules are just confusing or kind of frustrating, you are so not alone. Figuring out exactly when to add that little s to a verb can be a real headache, especially when you're starting out. But I promise, by the end of this, you're going to have a really clear and simple system for it. So instead of just memorizing a bunch of boring rules, we're going to do something different. We're actually going to follow a simple story about a character named Maria. We'll see what she does in her day-to-day life, and that's going to make all these grammar ideas feel practical, memorable, and just a whole lot easier to get. Okay, so our story starts with Maria's morning routine. We're going to focus on how to talk about what another person does, and the key to all of this is understanding this one very first idea, what I like to call the magic S rule. Here's the core idea, and it's pretty straightforward. When we talk about ourselves, I work, or about you work, or a group, they work, the verb just stays simple. But when we talk about one other person or thing, he, she, or it, the verb gets a special little ending. So, she works. Simple as that. So, how do you actually spell this ending? Well, there are basically just 3 simple rules to remember. For most verbs, you just tack on an S. Easy. If a verb ends in a consonant plus the letter Y, like in study, you change that Y to IES. And finally, for verbs that end with sounds like sh or ch, we add ES just to make it easier to say. So wash smoothly becomes washes. Now, it's not just about spelling, it's also about how it sounds. That final S can actually be pronounced in 3 different ways. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize this chart right now. The best thing you can do is just start listening for these different sounds when you hear English being spoken. You'll start to pick it up naturally. Okay, so we've got a handle on what Maria does, but what about all the things she doesn't do? To talk about that, we need a slightly different but very simple structure. The formula for this is actually super simple. To make a sentence negative for he, she, or it, we use the magic word doesn't. And here is the most important part. Right after doesn't, we use the plain original verb with absolutely no ending on it. And this right here is probably the most critical rule for making negative sentences. Look at what happens. It's like the S from works literally moves over to the word do to create doesn't. Once you use doesn't, the main verb goes back to its simple base form. You only need that S once in the sentence. All right, now that we've got the hang of positive and negative statements, let's apply this to Maria's evening. This is also a great chance to learn some really useful, practical words for talking about all those household tasks we call chores. Here's a fantastic list of activities you can talk about every day. And one little thing to notice, see how often we use the word the in these phrases? Like wash the dishes or make the bed. That's because we're usually talking about the specific dishes sitting in our sink or the one bed in our bedroom. Make versus do. This is a classic one. It trips up so many people, but there's a really easy way to think about it. You use make when you are creating something, a new result. You make the bed and you create a nice, tidy bed. You use do for a general task or process. You do the cleaning. That's the whole activity of cleaning. Okay, we're building a really detailed picture here. We know what Maria does, and we know what she doesn't do. Now let's add one more super important layer of detail, when she does all these things. And this is all about using these small but really powerful words called prepositions. Okay, this little cheat sheet here is your new best friend. Seriously, you might want to grab a screenshot of this one. Just remember, use at for specific times, like at 7 o'clock, and also for at night. Use in for bigger chunks of time, like in the morning or in the summer. And use on for specific days and dates, like on Monday. And speaking of rules, here's a really, really important exception to remember. This is a super common mistake. People often say things like in today, but words like today, tomorrow, and tonight already have the idea of time built into them, so they don't need another word like in or at in front. You just say, I'm busy today. All right, let's pull all of this together. We've learned so much just by following Maria around. Now, let's lock it all in by quickly going over the most common mistakes so you can make sure these rules really, really stick. First up, this classic error. It is so tempting to put that S on the main verb. But remember our number one rule for negatives? The S has already done its job in the word doesn't. So the main verb, like, gets to stay clean and simple. She doesn't like coffee. Perfect. And then we have the exact opposite mistake, which is just as common. In a positive affirmative sentence about he, she, or it, this verb just feels a little naked, doesn't it? It's missing its special ending. There we go. That looks much better. For a regular positive statement, that verb needs its S. He works. It's such a small detail, but it makes a huge difference. Okay, here's one more that catches a lot of people out. When we use the phrase a lot to describe the amount of something, in this case work, this sentence is missing a tiny but vital little word. That's it. If there's a noun coming after a lot, you need that little word of to connect them. He has a lot of work. She drinks a lot of tea. Simple. So when you boil it all down, what's the big secret here? It's that grammar only comes to life when you actually use it. The absolute best way to make these rules feel natural and automatic is to put them into practice. Try talking about your own morning or your evening using these exact structures. And you know what? That brings it all back to you. We followed Maria's day, and now it's your turn. So think about your own routine for a second. Using the rules we just covered, what's one thing you do every single day and one thing you don't do? Go on, give it a try.